we're going to start getting into some other things you need to know about music notation. The first thing we're going to get started with today is tied notes. Now, a tied note is a note that's held down for its duration plus the note that it's tied to. So we have a whole note, and this would be held for 4 beats. We have the 4/4 meter, so 1, 2, 3, 4, plus this note would be held down for an additional 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have a half note tied to an eighth note. So this note would be held down for 2 beats plus an eighth note on the third beat. So it would be held down to 1 and 2 and 3. And then this rest would kick in on the and of 3. And then this note would be held down from the 4 beat to the 1 beat. So as you can see, tied notes are similar to dotted notes. It's a duration that's held down, but tied notes can be held across bar lines or across measures, as you can see here and here. Okay, so we're going to get into ledger lines. Ledger lines are the lines that are above the staff or the clef, or lines that are below. As I stated in part 1, there are a lot more notes on the piano than what's in this area and this area. So notes are placed on what's called ledger lines. And as we said, the lines on this staff are E, or the notes on this staff are E, G, B, D, and F. And if you continue the notes, it's G, A, B, C, and D. And below the staff are also ledger lines, and the notes go E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Now, like I stated in part 1, I don't recommend using any kind of acronyms to memorize the notes. I think it's best to start identifying the notes as you see them. I do have the note letters inside the notes for right now for the purpose of this tutorial, but most sheet music will not have that unless it's a very beginner sheet music. So in the bass clef, if you continue up here, this top line was an A, and then the next note would be a B, C, D, E, and F. And of course, it keeps going. It continues up. Anywhere you go, the notes continue up until the piano runs out of notes, either going high or going low. So below the clef, we have E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. And it continues onto the clef as we showed the notes in part 1. Another way of identifying notes is by grouping them together as chords. So if a chord is 3 notes or more, so these notes grouped together are G chord. You have G, B, and D, which is a triad. And then these notes grouped together are A minor chord in the key of C, which we're going to get into keys shortly. So these notes would be A, C, and E. So we group them together. And down here we have a B, D, and F, which would be a B diminished chord. And we have C, E, and G, which is the triad for a C chord. So if you group them together, you're identifying all 3 notes at the same time, which you're going to see going to see chord groupings a lot in piano music. And the same goes for underneath, the lines that are underneath the staff. That's also a G chord. A G, B, and D is a G chord triad. And F, A, and C are an F chord triad. And down here, we see kind of a repeat. B, D, and F, and B, D, and F. You group them together, you got that B diminished chord triad. And then you have A, C, and E, which is an A minor chord. So there's lots of ways to identify the notes. But the more you sight read, the more you'll instantaneously know that that's an E note, and that's a C note, and that's an A note. And the more you sight read, the quicker you'll identify notes and become better at sight reading. The next thing we're going to get into is flat notes and sharp notes. So when we see this symbol here, this flat looking B looking symbol, that's a flat symbol. So that means that this note is a half step down from a natural G note. And I'll demonstrate that on the piano shortly. Likewise, this tic-tac-toe or number sign looking symbol is a sharp symbol. And that means that this G note is a half step up from its natural position. And we have some more flat notes here. So the note that these are assigned to, this G is a flat G, and this is a flat E. And the same goes for this note. That's a G flat. And this note, I'm sorry, that's a G sharp, and this is a C sharp. So this happens in music. This piece is in the key of C, but every now and again you'll see notes that are not in the key, and they're identified by a flat or a sharp. So another way of looking at sharps and flats is they're called accidentals. In other words, any key that's not a white key on the piano is a sharp or a flat. So here we have C natural, and now we have C sharp, and then D, C sharp again, because this sharp holds until further notice. So now we have this symbol here, which is a natural symbol, which means that the C returns to C natural. And likewise, we have F. We have this F sharp accidental. Then we have G, returns back to F sharp until further notice, but now it returns to an F natural. So this would sound like. Now, we also have double flatted notes, which means that this is an A 2 half steps down, which would make it a G note. And this is the equivalent of a double sharp note. So this would be C sharp, a C 2 half steps up. So it would be a D note. Now, there's reasons why you would do this, and this will be explained in further episodes, but be aware that all of this affects how the note is played on the piano. As you sight read, you'll have to immediately know that this is returning back to C natural, and that this is returning back to F natural, and this is a double flat A note, and this is a double sharp C note. Before we go into sharps and flats a little deeper, I want to first establish where middle C is on the piano. It's kind of very important because it's a landmark note that it's great to identify it as a starting point when you're looking at the piano. So a piano has 88 keys, and almost exactly in the middle you have this C note. This is a C. So it's also called C4 because it's the fourth C on the piano. This is the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. So we know by looking at this note that this is middle C. So in the second measure, and we're only looking at the treble clef for right now, the first note, which would be this G note, is flat. So it's a half step down. So that's a G flat, and it also could be an F sharp. This is a natural F, and if you sharp, make the F a sharp, a half step up, it's an F sharp. And the same goes for the G note. This is a G natural, and this is a G sharp, or an A flat. That's what's called an enharmonic note. It could be either a G sharp or an F or an A flat. So the final thing we're going to go over in part 2 of this tutorial is key signatures. So what are key signatures? Well, to simplify the music, if it's in a certain key, that means that, for instance, this is the key of C. There's no sharps or flats symbols, so that means it's only the white keys on the piano for this key of C. But if it's in the key of G, we know that in the key of G we have an F sharp, and throughout the piece of music that F will always be an F sharp in the key of G unless otherwise indicated. So for the purposes of simplifying writing the music, we know that throughout the piece of music this F will be a sharp unless otherwise indicated. And likewise goes for the rest of the keys. This is the key of D, which has an F and a C sharp. So throughout that piece of music, the F and the C will always be sharp, and so on and so forth. This is the key of A. F, C, and G are sharp. Now I left this in here. This is kind of a courtesy. If this were a real piece of music and there were notes in the measures, this is like a courtesy to let you know that there's a key change coming up. Because in music, it doesn't always stay in the same key. So it's to let you know that this is changing to the key of E. It was in the key of A, but now it's going into the key of E. So here we have E, continued. F, C, G, and D are sharp. And this is the key of B. F, C, G, D sharp, and A sharp. And this is the key of F sharp. F, C, G, D, A, and E are sharp. And in the key of C sharp, everything is sharp. We have F, C, G, D, A, E, and B. So I just know, because I've been playing music and sight reading so long, I know that what these keys are, and it's a good idea to memorize them. And there are methods of memorizing what the keys are just by looking at how many sharps there are. For instance, in this key, if you look at the last sharp note, is an A sharp. So this is the key of B. What comes after A? B. So we know that this is the key of B. Now, that's a good way of knowing if you're not sure what the key is when you're looking at the symbols. Okay, so now we're going to go over flat keys. So this is the key of F, which has one flat symbol. And you just have to remember that the key of F, B is flat in the key of F. And in the key of B flat, B and E are flat. Now there's an easy way to memorize which key signatures these are. All you have to do after the key of F is go back one flat, and that tells you what key this is. So we have an E flat and this is a B flat. So this is the key of B flat. And if you continue that idea throughout all of the key signatures, you can find out what key it is. This is A flat, so if you go back one flat, this is E. So that's an E flat. Makes this the key of E flat, and so on and so forth. If you go back, this is a D flat. If you go back to the behind that note, it tells you what key this is. So this is A, and you can do that for all the keys. And here is that courtesy identifying that there's a key change coming up. You'll see this in music, as in the sheet music, as the key signature changes.